Okay, so after reading and thinking about this week's discussion, I felt really compelled to just write everything down that I was feeling, and I felt like I didn't really have to think too hard about this question. And the question that I went off of is, are we made up of social conditioning, or is this just how humans are wired? And I said that this kind of ties back to the whole nature versus nurture thing for me, and how big of a discussion it is. And I think that this is so hard because labeling each person's development as social conditioning, or if it's just how we're wired, is such like a broad statement to put on each individual person. And I feel like depending on people's own experiences, throughout life, those are what influence who you become. But also, there are certain things that, I think of when it comes to how we're wired as humans that also play into how a person develops. So I also said that when it comes to how we're wired as humans, I believe that it's different among different cultures and religion. For example, one person in the U.S. or people in the U.S. might think a custom is inappropriate or unfair, whereas in a different culture, it's valued and considered like the norm. I also think family involvement and, as I said, experiences play a role in the development of each individual. And when I think of human instincts or being wired the same way, I instantly thought of motherly instincts, and I feel like there are a few things that I've seen in motherly instincts across all people and even species that, are the same. And I feel like also this is across all cultures as well. Motherly instincts such as nursing the baby, taking care of its needs, and knowing your baby is the best is one way that I believe all humans are wired the same way. And that's one of the only things that I feel like we can generalize for all humankind. I mean, we're all made up of, different experiences, and I just don't think it's fair to say that we're all wired the same way. Another way that I think humans could be wired the same is through sexual drive. And I believe that some degree all humans have a desire for sexual pleasure, to whatever extent that may be. But at this point, this is where I believe social conditioning comes into play, where it's a little mix of both. Social influences may play a part in the level of sexual pleasure or expectations of pleasure. For example, one who watches porn frequently may have an unrealistic expectation of sex, which may result in a constant need or desire of pleasure, and their drive might be more because of, what they're watching and putting into their heads compared to someone who doesn't. Now, I may be wrong, but there has to be some reason for an increase in sexual misconduct among humans, and that's where I feel like it varies from person to person. Like, we can say that we all have a sexual desire and that at some point in our lives, but it's not fair to label all people, because what about those people who take advantage of their sexual desire and project it onto other people? So once again, at some point, I feel like it goes beyond the wiring of mankind and more into the social conditioning of each individual person. So when I think of social conditioning, I can definitely see where it is relevant, especially in today's society. There is immense social pressure on the younger generation to fit a certain standard. So this kind of also ties back to last week's discussion on what is good for the child, where the child feels like they need to fit a certain role to be valued. But one positive social conditioning throughout child and adulthood is learning how to respond in socially acceptable or appropriate ways. So you have to be really careful with social conditioning, and I feel like there's a lot of negativity around social conditioning, in that, nowadays it's good to be unique and it's good to be different, and it's, there's value in being different. So projecting that, you have to act or talk or learn or do things a certain way can be kind of dangerous. So, but I think if we set a standard of social conditioning, like, acting appropriately, saying appropriate things, then that can be great, but it's just finding a balance between the two. So all in all, I think there is a mix between both social conditioning and human wiring going on in each individual person. So that's my say on this, and I just felt compelled to just go when I read this, because the whole nature and versus nurture thing too is something I'm pretty passionate about, and it's just ongoing study about what is it? Are we nature, nurture? What's going on here? So